Blake,
Sheriff,
we're back.
we are back.
This is the local law enforcement hour, and we hadn't been on in what, 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
All right, well, here we are.
Lots happened in 2 weeks.
Say your disclaimer. Go on ahead and
So,
get that out of the way.
for our listeners and persons jumping in online, my name is Blake Grooms. I am a city employee for the city of Lawrenceburg, but today the opinions and views that I have are those of my own. In no way, shape, or form are they to reflect the Lawrenceburg Police Department or the city of Lawrenceburg.
I'm listening. Did you leave anything out?
I didn't leave anything out.
So, we got a good show this evening. A lot of good things to talk about. I've got a whole page of notes and bullet points, but I think the biggest thing right now is the weather.
Yes, the weather has been absolutely awful.
I'm going to read this text message that I just got from our EOC, this group text message that gets sent out to first responders. The NWS Storm Prediction Center has issued a tornado watch for portions of eastern Arkansas, south central and southeast Kentucky, northern Mississippi, western and middle Tennessee. That's us.
That's us.
Effective this Thursday afternoon and evening from 12:50 p.m. until 10 p.m. Central. What's that called?
Standard time?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Primary threats include a few tornadoes likely, with a couple of intense tornadoes possible, scattered and damaging wind gusts to 70 miles per hour likely, scattered large hail events 1 to inch and a half in diameter possible.
And that's this afternoon?
That is this afternoon and evening from 12 until 10. So that's 10 minutes ago until 10 p.m. tonight.
Did they say when it would probably be in our area?
I don't know. I would suggest people, I tell you what, social media is the go-to place now to stay on top of storms, what's going on in the community. If I get on my Facebook page and scroll when there's bad weather, potentially bad weather, it seems like every other page that you scroll across is somebody talking about the weather, and they're telling you about the weather. So it's the most informed time right now that we're living in. If you don't know a storm's coming right now in Lawrence County, you're a little bit detached from what's going on.
Speaking of storms, the good people of Selmer got hit hard.
Yeah, they did. Sheriff Guy Buck, I think is his name. I was just talking to him a couple of months ago at the Sheriff's Association meeting. He's a good dude. And it's, for the most part, a pretty quiet little county over there.
Yep.
I don't know how big it is and what their population is, but I think I was reading earlier there was a couple of fatalities over there.
That's unfortunate. And I don't know, is Selmer in Hardeman or is Selmer in McNary?
It's Hardeman.
Is it Hardeman? But yeah, like you said, a little quiet community. You don't hear much come out of Selmer, and then next thing you know, they're on Fox News, and the whole nation is hearing about how they lost, some good people over there, and just had a bunch of houses and all kinds of
Looks
things.
like we got a lot more coming too. I think there's stuff predicted for today, tomorrow, and Sunday. So, as a matter of fact, I think we had another meeting scheduled for. No, that was the one that I missed at 1 o'clock today. So they're meeting right now to talk about the storms coming in this afternoon. But just keep an eye on. If I could tell our viewers anything, keep an eye on.
Because it's that time of year where the weather is just totally unpredictable.
I don't think we're in the high threat level or the high threat level area, but still, I think we're in the 2 out of 5 area or something. But I mean, I don't know. I hadn't looked at it earlier, but just watch your phone. Make sure you're not caught in a bad storm. Did you see the pictures that I had on social media?
I didn't.
The other day.
I don't.
That's right. I asked you about that.
I don't have Facebook. I'm a lot happier for not having Facebook. Now my wife does, and from what I understand, everything went good.
Yeah, next time you're home, if you want to see him for yourself, I got to meet Cash Patel, our new FBI director, so I'm on this law enforcement roundtable, and I don't know if we talked about this the
Briefly,
last time we were on.
briefly.
I think I was going up a day or two later, but um, so I'm on this roundtable that Senator Bill Hagerty's office put together. I think he partnered with Martha Blackburn, and they put this roundtable together. It's a law enforcement roundtable, and it's me and a few other sheriffs meet from time to time, and we'll just kind of go over the problems that we're seeing in our communities. And so this time, I get a text message from Senator Haggerty's guy. I don't know his official title, but he schedules all of his stuff like this. And he said, "Hey, we're going to have a roundtable meeting. We'd love for you to come if you can make it." And he said, "Director Cash Patel is going to be coming." So
I'm
good.
like, I'm there,
Yeah, it was
right?
a great
Yeah,
meeting. So and I don't know if I told you about this guy that I hired as a reserve deputy. He uh he knows Cash personally. He knows a few of the other he knows Pete Hegseth. He knows him personally. He was he provided security, personal security for these guys and some other well-known important people. So and I hired him as a reserve deputy, got to know him through another contact and become good friends with him and was able to hire him as a reserve deputy. And he's just really squared away guy. And so when I found out that Cash was going to be in town, I gave him a call and I said, "Hey, your old running dog is going to be in Nashville if you want to go up with me." So I met him and we went in and it was very informative and it was just really good. And we went around the table, and all the sheriffs got a few seconds to introduce themselves and share their concerns and problems that they've seen in their areas. And so it, so it went around the table, and it gets to me, and I told Cash, I said, for me, uh, it's just nice to know we've got somebody that's over the FBI that's got our back.
right.
I said, and we've got some good field agents in our area that help us out with some of our bigger investigations. But and I told him, I said, for me, just knowing that we've got somebody at the top of the FBI that's with us, that's going to stand shoulder to shoulder with us
Mm,
because I still see things in black and white on a lot of things. It's us against them.
right.
It's the good guys against the bad guys. And I told him, I said, it's time we quit trying to police the police and we joined forces and we took the fight to the bad guy,
Mm.
the criminal. So, and he was very receptive of it. And a lot of the other sheriffs talked about what they needed in their community from the FBI and when it comes to drugs and violent crime. I told him, for me, I said, yeah, we have our problems in Lawrence County with drugs and violent crime, and it's nothing that we haven't been able to handle so far. But internet fraud and internet scams just wear us out,
Yep.
and we don't have the resources that they do. Uh, and I said that I said I would love for my investigator or my supervisor over CID should just be able to pick up the phone and call an FBI field agent and say, "Hey, I need your help."
Right.
It should be that easy.
'Cause
And I understand there has to be maybe a written request or the higher ups have to approve it or whatever, but we should be able to have that relationship with our local FBI field agents. So, and he 100% agreed. And when it went around the table and everybody was finished, he told us what his plans are.
and what are they?
His plans are to put a lot more FBI agents out in the field.
Well, it was announced on Fox News today that in the month of March they had over 5,000 applications for the FBI, and that
It's
has
probably
been
more than they've had in years.
that I think. Oh, don't quote me on this, but I think in 2024 they had 2,000. March 2024 they had like 2,000. And it's my understanding that's the way it is with
Hmm.
all federal entities now. not just the military. The
Mm-hmm.
military has never had the recruitment numbers that they've had at this point. So it's not just the military; it's FBI, it's DEA, it's Homeland Security.
Well, this administration is is overhauling all
Right.
these agencies. And something else he said, I know you probably saw the sound bite where he said he was going to close down the Hoover building or whatever, and put everybody back to work. I don't know if he's going to that extent or not, but he's definitely pulling people out of the offices, the people that are certified, bona fide FBI agents that's assigned to work from home or whatever. He's saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. You're going to get out in the field and you're going to help.
Good.
And I love that.
I do too.
He also talked about appointing a local law enforcement leader from each state and making that individual like a liaison between the FBI and local law enforcement, which is
Awesome.
great because you need that. Because if you go back over the last few years, there's been this huge disconnect
Hmm.
between the FBI and local law enforcement. And we all know why. And it's not going to be easy to get that relationship back.
Oh no.
And he's taken all the steps to do it, but having a liaison, in my opinion, is key. You know, so he's got a lot of great ideas, man, and it's just so good to know that we've got somebody in there that's with us,
Well,
that's
like you
going to have
said,
our back.
being able to have that doorway where local law enforcement can contact the local federal field agent for that region, that area, or and as you pointed on, sometimes it may depend on a written request getting approved by a supervisor, but just being able to have that doorway open. Because I'm sitting here 20 years later, I can't tell you how many times with the FBI, um, there's been a need for something and it not be there. Now the DEA for Middle Tennessee has been absolutely outstanding. Um, excuse me, not the DEA, the ATF. I bought more dope with ATF money than I ever had with DEA or FBI money.
Legally, right?
Legally, yes, right, legally. Sorry.
People watching don't understand that terminology. When we say, "Oh yeah, I bought dope off that guy," a few years ago,
Right, legally.
yeah, they don't understand. That's when we was doing undercover stuff.
So yeah, I mean the ATF in Middle Tennessee has for us in this area has just always been outstanding. It's like, hey, let's go buy some dope, and if we can include a gun somewhere in this, we'll be very happy, And it's like we have this big old bucket of money over here. So if you need it, we're here for you. They've always been outstanding, but as you pointed on, there has been a disconnect between local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and the FBI for so long, and that's mainly because and I'm saying local law enforcement, not just me, have felt that the FBI has been more of a parenting um, agency instead of a supporting agency. Monday morning quarterback is
Hmm.
it just gets old. And at the end of the day, you got more police officers out there doing good than you have messing up on stuff. So,
Let's talk just a little bit, and I'm glad you made that comment again. I think we talked about this last time we had our show when you said I bought dope off this person. People out there in the community that hear that terminology probably wondering, what does that do? What does that help? What does that solve? Let's talk about why we go undercover and buy dope.
so first of all, buying dope, a law enforcement officer undercover or with the assistance of a criminal informant. Um, it's like climbing a ladder. Okay. Just like you see on TV, the big movies are made of the big bad guys, El Chapo, so on and so forth. Them
Hmm.
guys are at the top of the ladder, but you got local, Joe in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, that's primarily selling dope for the most part to support his habit. So, whenever it comes to buying drugs legally undercover, trying to go after these drug dealers. You usually have to start with the low,
Street level.
yeah, the street level man because you're trying to essentially just get as high as you can. Now, the way our law is written, unless it's changed, this is the way it was back in the day. If you're if you get charged with selling drugs to an undercover police officer, there's an enhancement there where you're actually, for our listeners out there, you're actually in more trouble because the state looks at it that you're recklessly selling. You're not just recklessly selling drugs out here. You're recklessly selling drugs to the point where you just sold to an undercover cop and you didn't even know it.
Hmm.
So you hear people talk about, well, that's just putting money in the drug dealer's pocket, and in one sense it is. But what happens is my $1,000 just went in that drug dealer's pocket, but that drug dealer just committed a Class B felony and is now looking at 20 years to spend on the state side. Now, going back to our ATF, something I love about the federal government was the 50-gram rule. If I was able to buy 2 ounces or more from you, that is an automatic 10 years, day for day, no parole, no short time, no get out of jail good time, just in that one, that one situation. And they have guidelines and laws in place where it can actually go up from there depending on your criminal history.
So on an undercover buy, and we'll kind of walk through the details just a little bit on how it works. So we have buy money in the
Mhm.
drug unit, just like every other drug unit. But buy money is money that is given back to the department in cash from our seizure account.
Yep.
So when we take Joe drug dealer's car and his motorcycle and his jet ski and we sell it at auction, that money goes into our seizure account and we
Yes.
get that back in cash
Hmm.
to buy drugs.
Right.
So when we do an undercover buy from a drug dealer,
It's a lot of paperwork.
it's a lot of paperwork and it's dangerous. But what that does is that shows the court system. Now, sometimes we'll get a PC buy,
Hmm.
and a pre PC buy is probable cause for a search warrant.
Right.
Sometimes we'll make three buys from the same drug dealer to either obtain that search warrant or to later indict them on those charges.
Right.
Remember when we used to have the big roundups?
Hmm.
You know, we would have undercover operations that would last 6 or 8 months. And once the operation was totally over with, we would take those people that we bought drugs from and we would indict them.
Right.
And we might have 15 or 20 people that we've been buying off of for 6 or 8 months. And then we go have a roundup. We go arrest them and bring them in. Say what you want to about them. They're good, they're bad. Do they really disrupt the flow of drugs in the community? You might argue that they do. Some people might argue that they don't as much. But it's one of the effective ways that we enforce drug problems in our county.
Well,
You also have because a lot of people don't know we have like a cone. If
hmm
you can imagine a cone, and at the very top of that cone is your investor and your wholesaler.
right.
All right, then it goes down to your trafficker and
Hmm.
your mid-level dealer. Then it goes down to your mules and your people that are bringing in small amounts in your area. Then it gets down to your local drug dealers, your street level drug dealers, which is normally where we begin. But the goal is to work it all the way to the very top
Right.
to get the big dude,
Hmm.
the investor or the wholesaler or the trafficker. But for here, and we use this approach when I was at the drug task force. I know you did too. It's the three-prong approach that we use, and it's undercover drug operations, and it's interdiction, and it's what we call buy bust or buy walk. For
Right.
people that don't know what a buy bust or a buy walk is for example, we've we've made two undercover drug buys from this individual. We
Hmm.
know he's a dope dealer. We know he's selling. We went in there and made purchases on audio and video and watched him show us the drugs, weigh the drugs, watched him take the money that we give him. We know he's a drug dealer. The third time, we might do what they call a buy bust. And that's just you go and you sell him the drugs, and as soon as he leaves with the money, you have a uniformed deputy do a traffic stop, take him down, take that money that we've already Xeroxed, and we know the numbers on it. It's
Right.
it's 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 recorded bills, and we just take him down, we put him in jail. We put him in jail for that charge, and then we put him in jail for the previous charges. That's one effective way. Search warrants, I'm big on search
I
warrants,
am too.
and I've made it clear to my drug guys, let's kick in doors
Hmm.
because number one, you put them out of business.
Right.
You know, might not be for a few days, might not even be for a couple of weeks, but at least you put him out of business for a little while. Number two, it lets the neighbors and the people in the community see it.
Right.
We've even got a sign that we'll set up on the side of the road. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, search warrant in progress. Avoid this area or whatever, you know. So we let people know
Well,
down
that
the
gets
road.
people's attention, doesn't
Sure, it does, and I mean that's it's good business. It lets the community know that you're working on a problem.
So I'm glad you brought this up and you wanted to go down, piece by piece. What I think a lot of our listeners need to understand, and I mentioned it earlier, that some people look at it as we're giving the drug dealers money. And again, essentially we are. But I can't tell you how many times, I'd say 90% of the times, where I bought or an informant bought dope for me from Joe drug dealer. And after we had everything we needed, we went and kicked his door in. And we ended up seizing a lot more money than we paid Joe drug dealer in the first place.
And if that money is commingled
Then it's
with the
fruit.
money that we just used to make that purchase,
Right. Then
all that money's dirty.
it's dirty.
All of
It's
it's
fruits
dirty.
of the poisonous tree. And at that point, not only, let's say we've spent $1,000 on this guy, $2,000 over a period of 2 to 4 buys, and then we kick his door in, and he's got 10 grand, and a Crown Royal bag hid, underneath his mattress. Not only are we taking his 10 grand, I'm taking his Ford F-150. I'm taking his Camaro. I'm taking his 25 pairs of Jordans in his closet, okay? Because I
Those are
can,
the old days.
there it is, because, Joe Drug Dealer has not had a job in 7 years.
Now, is not having meaningful employment, is that still a reason now to seize property? I mean, you're more up to speed than I am on the current seizure laws. I know they tightened them up a lot.
They've tightened them up a lot, and for our listeners out there, just because you don't have a job, that does not give law enforcement the authority to take your stuff.
Used to.
Okay, it's kind of like you mentioned a cone. I call it a pyramid. If you're going to build a pyramid, the first thing you do is got to have a solid foundation, and that's we have discovered Joe Drug Dealer selling drugs. We've bought drugs from Joe Drug Dealer. Not only the informant, but the informant has introduced the undercover police officer to Joe Drug Dealer, and it's all about articulation. Okay, no different than arresting somebody from DUI. You have to articulate absolutely every single thing you know and understand about this person and how they've gotten to where they are simply because they're selling drugs. And just because they don't have a job, take the same person who, let's say, has a job at a gas station. He's working 40 hours a week, but yet he's selling drugs. And that may be one defense. Well, no, I got that money because I work. But just like you said, in that $10,000 that we found underneath his mattress, I've got 13 bills in that $10,000 stacks that I've Xeroxed and copied down the serial numbers are that we
Hmm.
used to buy dope from him.
So there's, correct me if I'm wrong, in order to take somebody's property, uh, we either have to, one, say it's a conveyance,
Right.
which means, for example, a vehicle. If Johnny Criminal used that vehicle to deliver or to buy drugs,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a conveyance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's seizable. It has to be currency. It either has to be proceeds from drug sales,
Mm-hmm.
or it has to be able to. We have to say that's money that was about to be used in a drug deal.
Right.
What else?
And not just making deals. That's one thing I do like about the state of Tennessee. As far as the seizure of a vehicle or the fancy term conveyance, in the state of Tennessee, we've got it where if you're caught traveling with, and I'm not going to give the exact amount because I don't want some people out here trying to get,
Mm-hmm.
smart. But if you're caught driving with a certain amount of drugs, we don't even have to prove that you're selling. Matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, you may not be selling.
It's what a reasonable person would believe, and that's
Yes.
the difference between a felony amount and a misdemeanor amount.
Hmm.
I mean, you're not going to convince anybody if you got a pound of methamphetamine that that's personal use.
Right.
You know, so you look at that, and you also look at the property when you seize it. If for example, if the guy's got four wheelers and jet skis and side by sides, and we're looking at it to seize, I'm gonna ask Johnny Criminal, so how did you get this four wheel?
Right.
And if he says I purchased it legally, I mean I used my own money and I paid. Well, how did you pay for it? Did you set it up on a payment plan, or did you pay cash for it, or what? So we're gonna listen to what he says, and we're gonna figure out how we want to do it. If I can prove, if I know he's dirty and I know he purchased that
Hmm.
with proceeds from drug sales, I still have to prove it.
Right.
I still have to show the court how I know this. So it all comes back to just doing your homework, sitting down and talking to the violator, trying to figure out, trying to tear apart his story when he
Right.
says, "Well, this ain't even mine. I bought this for my daughter." There's a.
Or that's my mama's vehicle.
Mhm.
Okay. And then what we do then is we go back and like I told you earlier, I don't have Facebook. I hate Facebook, but I love that so many drug dealers have Facebook because time after time after time, yeah, you can say that's Granny's vehicle or your mama's vehicle all day long, but them four rap videos that you put on YouTube, me having documentation, you on camera, you on video, have still frame pictures of you driving this vehicle to
You
go.
might not own it, but you possess it
That's
24
it.
7.
That's it. And
Yeah.
at that case, just because it's in grandmama's name, that doesn't mean I can't take it.
It's tightened up a lot. I listened to my drug unit talk about seizure laws, and whenever I hear one coming down the pike in Nashville up on Capitol Hill, because there's a lot of they're trying to make it harder and harder and harder to seize property.
Right.
And it's a shame, because I mean that's how you really sting the bad guy.
Hmm.
That's how you put him out of business.
Yep.
He knows he's gonna make a phone call and he's gonna get out of jail. He's not gonna sit in there long enough for the ink to get dry on his warrant, and he's gonna be right back out. But when you take his wheels, when you take his means of transportation, when you take his cash where he
Hmm.
can't buy anymore so he can resell it, when you take all of his possessions that he bought with drug money, it demoralizes him,
It
makes him
does.
makes him want to quit. And that's what I always tell people whenever I go with the guys on a search warrant. I love having that conversation with Johnny Criminal and just saying, "Listen, man, this isn't anything personal. Yeah, I mean, I can't stand a drug dealer, but I mean, this is my job. This is what we do, and I just want you out of business. I want you to quit.
Mm.
I want you to stop selling drugs, get a job, and live life like you're supposed to."
Right.
And that's how you do it. When you put them out of business like that, you
And
demoralize them.
that's the easiest way to put them out of business. So for so long, um, personal attorneys and for a while, the federal government started, you know, chirping was how we had more interdictors in the state of Tennessee stopping westbound traffic than we had stopping eastbound traffic. And you know where I'm going with this because
Hmm.
the money is always going west,
Hmm.
and the majority of the dope in Tennessee is always going east.
Hmm.
Um, and listen, we got some really dumb guys in law enforcement. With that being said, we have some geniuses in law enforcement, and it didn't take long. And I think it started around the early to mid '90s, where law enforcement realized the quickest way and the most powerful way to hurt drug dealers is their money. So you started having more interdictors on westbound traffic than you did eastbound. And then bam, here you go, 1 million,
Hmm.
2.5 million, $6 million, just left and right, 500,000 time after time after time after time. And the craziest thing, some people out there was trying to call foul that we were policing for profit.
Hmm.
And, we don't police for profit, but at the end of the day, we do keep it in the back of our minds that the more money we get off our local drug dealer, the less money our good citizens
Sure.
have to spend.
Hey, it saves taxpayer
It
dollars.
does. It
If
saves
you
a
let the bad
bunch.
guy purchase new vehicles and new equipment, new radios and body cameras, then that's what we're going to do. But you're right. That whole policing for profit crap, it got started back in, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I'm not going to say his name. Everybody knows his name. He's a Channel 5 reporter, and he started that. And I think a lot of our higher ups in government kind of buckled
Hmm.
under it. And, listen, we're not going to take an honest man's money, period.
Never.
Never going to take an honest man's money. If I stop you, and I'll give you one example, I stopped this guy on the interstate when I was working for the drug task force. He was riding shotgun with another guy. They were northbound, um, and I got him on the shoulder. Well, he had, long story short, um, I got him out, done a field side or roadside interview, asked for consent to search the vehicle. I got consent to search the vehicle. Before I started, I asked them if they had any large amounts of drugs, cash, contraband, anything in the vehicle. Said no. Well, under the passenger side front seat was a money bag. And when I pulled it out, I knew it had a lot in it. I mean, it was like that thick.
Awesome.
And I opened it up, and it had, I forget how much it was. It's $6,000, $7,000 in small bills. And so I questioned him. As soon as I opened up the bag, I could smell marijuana. And,
Even better.
and so I asked him, I said, so let's talk about this money. And he said the driver said he had just sold a motorcycle and he was going to go to Nashville and buy another motorcycle. The other guy said that he told him that his grandma gave that money to him. So I
Mm.
had conflicting stories.
Right.
And both of them had a criminal history for selling drugs. So I had that. I had the conflicting stories. I had the money that he failed to tell me about. And I also had it in a container that smelled like marijuana.
Hmm.
And I had a canine alert on the vehicle and on the money bag. So didn't find any marijuana, didn't find any drugs in the vehicle. But um, in my mind, I knew what it was. So I took his money and wrote him a receipt and gave him a seizure notice. So I go in front of the local judge, and I'm not going to name the judge. I'm not even going to name the county that I was in, but I took it in front of the judge, and the judge asked me, and he said, how much drugs did you find? I said, I didn't find any drugs. Remember, he looked at me over his bifocals, and he said, why are you taking this money? Or he says, why are you asking permission to take this money? And I said, Your Honor, I said, I mean, I'll explain in detail. And he said, well, please do. So I explained everything that I just said to him. And he looked at me over his glasses and he said, I don't feel like you can prove beyond reasonable doubt that this was proceeds from drug sales. And I said, Your Honor, with all respect, I don't have to show proof beyond reasonable doubt. I just have to show probable cause. Am I
Right.
wrong? And he got mad and he said, I'm not signing it. And he signed a denial order of the seizure.
Wow.
So I was able to go to another judge and I talked to a legal attorney and we talked about it. What do I do now? And so I talked to another judge and the judge was like, yeah, let's go on ahead and seize it. Well, I mean, it turned out to be a good seizure because the guy never showed up. He never filed for it.
Oh, awesome.
So we wound up being able to take that money and we put that money back and we bought vests and firearms and equipment and all that other stuff. So I mean, it all worked out.
Hmm.
But that's just one. You can't just take somebody's money because you think it's dirty.
That's it. We're not.
You have to build your case at the scene.
I have never, nor have I known of a situation where somebody is on their way to Sunday school and get pulled over by the police and they get the $200 they've got in their billfold taken because they believe it's drug proceeds. The police is done. We have an obligation to make sure we're not taking clean money.
Hmm.
Okay, just as we've discussed on here before, like trying to prove someone's guilt, we have just as much a responsibility of trying to prove their innocence. Okay, I've never taken money or property from anyone in my entire career that I did not absolutely know was
Sure.
proceeds.
Yeah, you're not going to do that. I'm
You,
not
you
going to do
can't. You have
that.
you have a moral obligation.
Hey, if I ever had a currency seizure, on the side of the road, and I was back and forth, and I don't know. I don't know if this is dirty money or if this is good money. I mean, and if I had any doubts, I'd chalk it up. I'd say, get on out of here.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. But I think that was pretty informative about how we enforce,
And in
how
my
we go after these
and in
drug
my
dealers.
personal opinion, undercover drug buys is the easiest way to eradicate drug dealers from your community. Now, me and you are both, former interdictors. We love it. We love being on that pavement, and in trying to, within the first 45 seconds, determine on whether or not we've got drugs in this vehicle. With that being said, um, the quickest and easiest way to hit a drug dealer's drugs, his property, and his money is undercover buys.
I agree. I agree. And an aggressive patrol. I always say if you want to put down if you want a drug house out of business, an aggressive patrol is how you do it. Um, but let's talk about. Did you hear about Pizza Hut the other night?
No, I didn't hear about what happened.
Yeah, well, we were looking for this person. We've been looking for this person for a while, and we found out that they were at Pizza Hut. So we went there, and they saw us roll up. I don't know how they wound up on the roof, but they wound up on the roof trying to evade
Like the person
capture.
he was looking for?
Yeah, I haven't seen the body camera, but I hear it's pretty comical. But
Wow.
and I think some of your guys might have been involved. I just having to think about that. I'm going through my notes trying to think of what I can trying to think of something that I can put on here that we can
I
talk
bet that
about.
body cam footage
I
is
should have
something.
found out a little bit more about it, but anyway, I didn't. Um, y'all don't have a drug dog right now, do you, at the city
No, I
police
wish we
department?
did.
We don't either.
I
And
wish we
this is the
did.
first time since I've been in office that I don't have a drug dog. And that my sheriff's deputy that was killed in that accident last July 3rd, he had a drug dog, and it was his. Can't remember if it was ours or we got the dog for free from another agency, and we decided to let the dog go with his with a family member. We retired the dog, and so we don't have one. So I've been on contacting all my canine buddies that I've worked with through the years, and I found one. Catch is it's pretty far off.
Yeah.
The good news is it's seems to be a pretty sharp dog. So, and we were talking about this before we got on air. I'm really picky about my dogs,
You should be.
and the reason why is because I had the best drug dog. Well, this Vic was a bomb dog, um, but he was the best dog I ever had, and I think I've had 7 or 8
You've had 7 or 8 dogs.
yeah, working
Can't
dogs.
can't do it.
Yeah, I've had through my career. So I started with a little golden retriever in 1997, and then that dog got moved to another agency, and then I took on a black lab, and then through the years, I've just had working dogs, and then I got into bomb dogs when I was working in Iraq. That was the first bomb dog that I had, a little female Belgian Malinois. She wound up washing out because she couldn't handle the extreme conditions of Iraq, and so I got a Dutch Shepherd who was just an awesome dog. I mean, up until that point, he was probably the number one or number two dog that I ever had, and his name was Tango. Tango was a beast, man. But it wasn't until I came home and I went to work for a private company. And this would have been in 2016, 15 maybe, 14 or 15. So this company that I was working for out of Knoxville was a private canine company, and they hired out searches in um, buildings, schools, manufacturing buildings, companies, and they we would go in and do drug searches. Most of it was schools.
Hmm.
That's what I was hired to do. And the owner said, "Well, already got us a dog." And he said, we got to ride up to Pennsylvania and pick this dog up. They're going to meet us in Pennsylvania. Dog's coming from Baden Canine in Ontario, Canada. So I've done a little research, and Baden trains dogs for our special forces. I mean, our green, not our Green Berets. I think they train our dogs for Navy SEALs. Anyway, it's a real top-notch uh, canine company. So the whole time we were being told that I was going to get a little Belgian girl dog
Mm.
because that's what I wanted. I'd had mostly had boy dogs, and you know how boy dogs are
Mhm.
sometimes.
It's always a
Sometimes
struggle
they're
which
hard,
end of
dude.
that
When they
leash
get out
is
of the
in
car,
control.
they got two things on their mind, and until you change gears, they're
Mm.
going to keep those two things on their mind. They're going to be looking for something to hook up with or something to fight.
Yeah.
So, uh, so we get up there at this hotel and we walk into this lobby and it's pouring down rain. We drove all night. We walk into this lobby and there's the guys from Bad and Canine. They're all standing around. We come around the side. Well, there's this dog in the floor. Captain, this dog looked like a werewolf. And the owner of the company, he looks at Vic and he said, whose dog is that? And the guy from Baden with his real thick Canadian accent. He said, this is your dog. And he said, that's not my dog. I can't take that dog into a school. He looks like he's going to eat every kid in the freaking United States. So he says, no, trust me. He said, he's a great dog. He's perfect for what you want. He'll do a great job. He said for 90 days, and this was at the beginning of the summer. He said, 3 months. He said, if it's not working out, let me know. I'll come back down. I'll bring you another one. I'll pick this one up.
Okay,
That was the
sweet.
deal. So the owner's looking at me and he says, what do you think? And I says, well, I don't know. So I walk over and take a knee to him. And I don't know if you ever saw Vic. Vic he was a big shepherd. I mean, he had a big frame on him. He was put together really well. I mean, he was big for, some shepherds, they look kind of goofy
Right.
when they get really big and they got the
Mm.
little narrow hips and the short back leg. They look kind of silly. Vic was just a really intimidating looking dog. And he had a black face. He had the brindle all over him. His feet was the size of my hands. He was just a monster of a dog. And I walked over and took a knee beside him and put my hand. He sniffed my hand. I reached around and scratched him behind the ear, and I stood up and I said, "Let's go." I mean, he just followed. He just tagged along with me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, he'll work." So I took him home. We get back, and he only knew a couple or three odors. I can't remember what it was. He was supposed to have his four main odors: his marijuana, meth, heroin, and cocaine, but he was struggling with them. And it was probably just that getting acclimated to Tennessee weather.
Yeah.
Me,
You. Yeah.
I don't speak Canadian, and his commands were German, which I was familiar with German commands when I was. And the reason a lot of people always ask why is he in German? I says, well, I don't want anybody else talking to my dog.
Right.
That's the reason. But anyway, I get him back and I start imprinting odors because the odors that we were looking for in schools were a lot more than marijuana, meth, heroin, and cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
We was looking for pills. I was able to imprint 4 or 5 different kind of pills, from Valium to hydrocodone to Xanax to different kinds of pills. Caffeine pills is one of the ones that he had to be certified on. I can't remember what all the odors, but all the total there was probably 12, a dozen odors that he had to
Wow.
be certified on. And when I first started out with him, I was a little iffy on him. But once me and him bonded, he turned out to be the best dog I ever had.
Really.
I was telling you how I could, when I could walk in to do a search, we'd walk up to the threshold of the door and I'd put him in a down,
Mm-hmm.
and he would go into a down, and I'd do a safety walk through the room. A lot of people didn't know the purpose of that, and the guy that owned the company had never been taught that. And I said, that's K9 101. I said, you always go into a room before you turn your dog loose in there to search, looking for anything that can hurt your dog
Right.
first. You're looking for anything: nails in the floor, razor blades, food, other dogs, other animals, uh, some of these drugs out here that'll kill a dog.
Right.
If they snort some meth or there's somebody's crushed up or Roxy or something, and they sniff it and it could kill them. So you do a safety walkthrough through the room before you get started, make sure there's nothing in there. Uh, but I had never had a dog that I could run off leash in a room,
Hmm.
because you want to keep that control. With Vic, man, he was what I call a push button dog, and I could finish my safety walk, and I could step into the middle of the room, and I could say soup, which is German for search,
Hmm.
and he would just take apart the room with his nose. It was the coolest thing to watch,
It is cool to watch.
And when he would get done, I would tell him to post, and he would come back, and he'd sit beside me, and I'd hook him back on the leash, and we'd go to the next room. But he was such a good dog, and and his obedience was just off the chart. So I expect that now.
Well, and you should, because just like a police officer having morals, I think we have an obligation whenever it comes to dogs to try to seek out the best dog we can get, because um, dogs can't talk. All right, so when they give us that alert, or in the legal word, that positive identification, we have got to know without beyond a shadow of a doubt my dog has just alerted to the odor of a narcotic.
Hmm.
That's important. You don't want a substandard dog. And a lot of people out there don't realize these dogs ain't cheap.
Mm-mm.
They ain't cheap. You get a cheap drug dog, you need to be a little leery. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like that female male that couldn't stand heat overseas. A good dog is priceless. I had a good dog. Now she was crazy. Working off like she wasn't a push button dog. I can remember one time I was going through my certification process on lead, and I mean we're just killing it. I mean killing it. We're walking into a room and she's pulling me. I'm not even started the search yet. She's already pulling me to an area and going back and forth in that kind of, and then bam gives me an indication. Got kind of cocky one time, and it was on the last. It was heroin. We're always doing good on heroin. And went into this room. I'm like, put her off lead, see what she does. Put her off lead, and she just starts running around the room, tearing books off the shelf. She's like, "Daddy's got me off lead. It's time to
It's
play."
playtime.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
and
not
I'm
worried.
like, I'm chasing my dog, embarrassed, putting her on the lead. And anyways, we finished business. But yeah, a good dog stands out. Like I told you before, whenever I was a canine handler, I would go down the first Wednesday of the month and train with Florence, and then the third Wednesday, me and Florence would go train with Huntsville, and I got to really see what an elite canine program is. And he's retired now, but like I mentioned before, Mike Posey back in the
Hmm.
day
I remember, yeah.
was amazing. And probably it still is amazing. That type of talent you don't lose. What he could do naturally with a dog, um, take a really nice, really good shepherd, and then 9 months later they are a crime fighting, bad guy eating, dope finding machine.
I think I think our next dog at the sheriff's department is going to be a dual purpose. And I've got a couple, three deputies that's interested in dual purpose. People who don't know what a dual purpose canine is for example, if you've got one that'll find drugs, and also have a bite dog
Hmm.
combined, that's dual purpose. We've never had one at the sheriff's department. There's a little bit of a liability when you turn a dog loose to retrieve a bad guy that's running, but I think I'm, I think that's going to be
I
I think
hope you
that's
do.
going to be our
I
next
hope
dog.
you do.
There,
That would be
there's a,
great.
as well as I do. There's more people that evade arrest right now than there ever have.
Hmm.
I mean, they do it. There's no telling how many pursuits and how many foot chases that we get into every month.
I mean, you see it on TV. Our people today do not act like the people did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like these people up Columbia University chaining themselves to the fence
If
and
if somebody ever looked at my searches on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, the very first one is going to be apprehension dogs. And I don't know, man. I can sit around in the evenings and
watch it all day
I
long.
can watch these guys dropping these dogs out of helicopters and throwing them in vans and them dragging the bad guy out of the back of the van. I mean, it's just good stuff. I think that's probably going to be our next one. Is going to be a dual
I was
purpose
reading
dog.
an article the other day that it's not just the scent. on how these bite dogs go after somebody. That, let's say you've got a bad guy that runs into a factory building. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay, he's trying to get away from the police, and he goes into an area where there's other people. It's not just the scent that dog is going after. The dog can actually, some dogs, it's recorded that they can actually hear your heartbeat,
I'm not
and
surprised.
they go towards the faster beating heart rate because that's the toy I'm chasing. And I just sat there and I was like, it's amazing. That's some good stuff right
I
there.
know. It's getting me in the mood.
So
Get me in the mood to
so
get another one.
so we're getting a dog.
Yeah, for sure. And I might get one too. Um,
How far out is it? This is good news for Lawrence County.
yeah. I'm thinking probably in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll definitely have another dog at the sheriff's department, and I might have one too. I'm to a point now to where I'm slowing down enough. You know, it's hard for me to find the time to work with a dog.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if I can get one that I want that I like, obedience is big for me. I mean, it's not, he was the most obedient dog that I ever had, and so now I got to have that again. There's nothing better than being able to walk into a room with a dog.
Hmm.
Nobody knows that dog's there. He's not barking. He's not jumping on crap. He ain't acting like an idiot. Vic, I could take him. I took him into schools. There was one. I'm gonna tell this story real quick. I know we're running out of time, but Vic was a sweetheart. He was such a sweet dog to be a big dog, and he loved kids. He loved people. He just loved it, man. He could chase his toy till he collapsed. You know, he was just a really cool dog, but he wasn't a dog friendly dog.
Okay.
And if he run across another boy dog, he turned into that werewolf that
Hmm.
I was talking about. I mean, the dog would literally, he was like a great white shark, man. His eyes would roll back in his head, and you had to be ready
Right.
to hold him back. Um, and there was a couple of incidents, but one of the funnier ones. So I was walking into this school with him, and it was the first time I'd been to this school. It was over in West Tennessee. So I walk in, and the SRO and the principal come out, and they see this dog, and they're like, "Holy crap!
That's a big dog.
That's not what we was expecting." I said, "Trust me. I mean, I go into 10 schools a week. He's super cool. He loves kids, you know." And I said, "Yeah, you can pet him. I mean, he's a sweetheart. You know, he was the perfect dog. He looked. I mean, he was so intimidating, but he wasn't. But he could be. He had the potential."
Yeah.
So we're walking him, and we get to the classroom, and the SRO would go in and say, "Hey, everybody, keep your book bags and everything in the floor and line up, and let's go out in the hallway." And then when all the kids came out of the school, I mean, out of the classroom, then me and Vic would go in and do a search of their book bags and stuff, you know. So we're standing there, and I've got him in a sit, and I'm just chatting it up with the principal or somebody, and these kids are coming out of this room in front of us, and I'm like me and you, I'm talking to him, and I've got my hand on the leash right here, and out of my peripheral vision, I see him posturing up. He's leaning up on his front legs, and he's bowing his chest out, and he's got his nose down and his ears forward. And I look at him, and when I look up, a girl is walking out of the classroom with a therapy dog
Oh.
that
Oh.
nobody told
Oh.
anybody about. Nobody said nothing.
Huh.
And in that very incident, you can imagine what I said. Oh,
Yeah.
and when I grabbed the leash with my left hand to get another hold on the right hand, Vic came to life, and he lunged forward. He was a 90, depending on what time of year, is 95 to 105 pounds. His weight fluctuated right
Big boy.
around 100 pounds.
Yeah, Abby was 58 pounds.
And he lunges at this dog, this little freaking terrier of some kind.
He's like, this is it's
1 minute,
lunch.
okay, I'm wrapping it up. And I grabbed him, and when he leaned, he let out this ferocious bark that you could hear from 5 miles away. Scared the dog, scared the girl, scared me, scared the principal. All the kids panicked. So fast forward to next month, and I'm walking in there, And I said, hey, look, if we're going to search a classroom, let's not search the one with the therapy dog. He said, don't worry about it. He said, they're not here anymore. He said,
And they ain't coming back.
he said the therapy dog had to go get therapy. My claim frame. We got to wrap it up. Good seeing you.
Yes, sir. Always pleasure.
Thanks for everybody for listening. And if you need us, call us 762-3626. That's anytime between Monday and Friday, 8 to 4. You can reach us or call me on my cell phone. Everybody else has got my number.
Everybody's got your number.
Yep.
Say bye.
See you.
We good?